So I am delighted to have this next panel, which is a direct follow-up from last year at the World Skills Cafe, where we talked about the importance of mid-careers. And as I said, there's been some interventions and some events, specifically in the UK, around mid-careers over the last year. But I really wanted to pick up on that point today. So please, can you welcome to the stage Stuart Ray from the IABM, I can't get my words out, the IABM, Polly Hickling, Emily Bergun, Hope Primus, and Sabina Bunger, and Joanne Lewis-Rhodes. Thank you so much, all of you.
IABM.
I know, IABM. I know, I can normally say it.
I'm going up the end here. No, I've got a microphone. I think I've got a microphone. Yes. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Great to see so many people here, and thank you to Carrie for inviting me to chair this 25-minute. Yeah. Synchronized watches, everybody. Let me first ask everybody on the panel to introduce themselves and just in 10 seconds say who you are and what you do, so everybody knows who you are and what you do. I'll start at the far end.
Hi, I'm Sabina. I've worked in the industry for over 20 years. For the first 2 decades, I worked in radio, and in the last couple, I've been supporting mid-career media professionals in their careers as a coach.
Excellent.
Hi, I'm Hope Primus. I work at on ITVX. I also do a few judging panels, so I do RTS and broadcast tech and innovation, and I've been in the industry for about 6 or 7 years now.
Thank you. I'm Polly Hickling. My background is in academia, so I worked at Solent University for 13 years running their media technology courses, and now I work in learning and development, so lots of what James just said was very on point. I'm also Vice President of Education for SIMPT and Head of Education for Women in Stream Media, and I've done that.
Hi, I'm Jo Lewis-Rhodes. I am Global Director of Professional Services at Vizrt, heading up our professional services delivery team for all of our projects. I've been with Vizrt for 4 years. Before that, I had an industry break, so learning mid-career, a lot of this tech is very relevant for me. And before that in production and Pro AV. So thanks for having me.
Hello, I'm Emily. I currently work at Sky as an associate technical specialist, specialising in virtual production and production software solutions for Sky News, Sky Sports News and Sky Sports Studios.
Thank you very much. Welcome to you all. What is mid-career? What do we mean? What do we mean by mid-career? So my challenge to you is 1 sentence. Sorry, Polly. You're looking at me like you're going to kill me. I'm going to start with you, Polly.
Can I say a little bit first?
Yeah.
So this mid-career thing came up here last year and has come up frequently since talking to people. And what I thought was mid-career, I'm now not sure. So for me, although it doesn't make sense, mid-career is anything past early career, which is like the first couple of years, because that's what it seems to be.
Sounds like a cop-out to me.
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing.
Okay. The obvious follow-on from that is, what do you mean by early career? But we might well spend... First couple of years. Okay, Hope?
Well, technically, I'm still early career then. I don't think I should be sat here. But no, I'm joking. Yeah, I've passed my first couple of years. I think for me, I sort of see mid-career as in you know, you've integrated, you passed your early stages, as Polly has said. You're sort of in the boat. You know you don't want to get out. You're just trying to figure out where we going to next. That's the way that I see mid-career. That I'm where I want to be, but it's sort of like what other roles in this sector can I start to delve into now?
Okay. Emily?
Oh, I actually quite like what you said, Polly, about the fact that the definition has changed, because I know that you've done so much work and research in this area. I remember a while ago the number was kind of like 5 to 10 years, and maybe 10 years is cutting it a bit short. But to me, I think it means, you know, early career is like getting your first job or getting, you know, starting as a freelancer, really setting yourself up in the industry. And to me, I think mid-career is kind of potentially looking at like maybe a big internal change, or upskilling in a different way, or moving even to a different company or something. And I guess for a lot of people these days that kind of takes place between 5 to 10 years, so maybe I'll stick with that.
So I'm going to politely disagree. So for me, what I see, I think 10 to 15 years is mid-career. So the way I see it is that when we join the industry, we're excited, there's a lot we want to do. And then after about a decade or so, maybe we want different things. And that's when I see people are questioning their next stage and what that might look like.
And finally.
I would agree with Sabina there that it's probably a little bit further on, a little bit more maturity in your role and your next steps, and wanting to upskill and cross-skill a little bit further. Obviously, early career, you're very involved, very keen, learning a lot very fast. It's that kind of, not plateau, I don't want to say plateau, but you've settled in a little bit more. And you're looking to really upskill a bit and move into new roles and new opportunities.
So maybe it's a state of mind rather than a number. Yeah, oh look, everybody nodded. That was good. So as we've heard, change is constant and accelerating. Nice sentence to connect our panels together. So you're all in an industry that is probably changing faster now than it's ever changed. It always has changed, but it's changing very quickly. How are you coping with that? And how do you see it kind of going on from here? I'm going to start with Hope, who feels like you're still early career.
Yeah, I feel like I'm still early career. I think the one word that comes to mind is resilience. I think genuinely that it's something that's probably you're not prepared for in early career, and the honest conversations about the resilience and adapting to change and trying again and again and again, and also being patient and taking a step and just saying maybe just wait, maybe just keep doing what you're doing now. You're not doing it, terribly. You're probably great at it, but I think if you're like me, once I've mastered something, I'm like, what's next? And what I've really learned this year is like just keep mastering it, because some things might pop out that you wouldn't have seen before. You might learn more things, and I think that it is tough, but I think it's worth it. And I think resilience is something that people I would encourage people to try and develop their resilience and not to take things personally if you can, which it is hard, but yeah.
And just to, again, draw a connection to the previous speakers, do you feel supported in terms of exploring those new things and having the space and the time to do it?
Yeah, I do. I feel like I do in terms of from my company, but I also think it comes from within. I think that you have to have like the resilience within yourself, that even if your team says no, even if the company says no, even if the world says no, like even if during COVID there was a lot of things we couldn't just go out and do, and people had to think outside of the box and think, how am I going to do it for myself, which is a lot easier said than done. But I think that there's also networking events such as this, there's Rise, there's so many things external to specific communities that I'll wait. But that, yeah, you can find resources outside, I guess, of your 9-to-5 working environment, or like universities and colleges and stuff.
So, Polly, you've come from an educational background into the industry, as it were. I'm guessing a lot of the students that you've taught are now in that mid-career kind of frame of mind. What's your view on this? And perhaps you're talking to them. One of them's here. What's your feeling about it?
So I totally agree with what you said there. I think a lot of it is on the individual, and I think you definitely see the people that excel the fastest and go the furthest in their career probably have a mindset like yourself. But what I think, and again, something that James said, great presentation, James, keep referring to it. What I've seen is that there isn't much capacity for people to do that because they are so busy. And particularly between that 5 and 10 year mark, again, it seems, this isn't my experience, this is just what I seem to have observed, there's a lot of pressure, and people's careers do really take off at that point. And the good people often end up being pushed quite quickly into a management position, which is great, or a team leader, something like that. And then there is a lot less time for them to do the networking, to come to these things. Sometimes they aren't even allowed to come to these things because they're so important on the ground. So I think when I said 5 to 15 years, I was more thinking, what's that point in time that people are trying to take the next step, and what does that look like, and how do they get there? Because my fundamental finding from looking at this stuff over the last year is that career pathways in what we do are not very clear, and the fact that everything keeps changing so fast is making it even more unclear. So, yeah, that.
Thank you. Joanne, in your experience, this balance between what you already know and what you need to know, how are you negotiating that? Is it even negotiable? Is there a way through it without spending an awful lot of your own time doing your own kind of training?
Yeah, exactly. And actually that comparison that you just made is really interesting, because for me personally, there isn't always the time to dedicate to that learning. Now, I'm not in a real technical role. I'm taking care of our technical people, and they're imparting their knowledge and their skills. So for me, probably I don't take enough care of that and don't have that time. But for my team, it's something that's incredibly important to me. And Sabina and I were talking before that in terms of training and including that in our productive utilisation as part of the team, it's incredibly important that we cross-skill, share experiences, case studies, projects that each other have worked on. You know, we fly the team to shadow on other real world cases. So for me, I make sure the team are invested in that time, but probably not so good in my kind of role. So there you go.
Okay. Emily, how long have you been at Sky?
Yesterday was my 6-year work anniversary.
So, happy anniversary.
Thank you. No, well, thanks.
Fair few changes in the last 6 years, I think it's fair to say. How have you managed to stay resilient and resilient enough to volunteer, or possibly be volunteered, for a panel like this?
Oh my gosh. I'd say the last bit of the question again. How have I stayed resilient enough
Yeah,
to...
I just made that up,
Okay,
so I can't
fine.
remember.
No, that's okay.
You know, you're still here.
Yes,
You're still
very
working in the
much.
industry.
100%.
Yeah.
I actually...
After 6 years of constant change and evolution,
yeah.
how are you coping?
I quite like that question, and I think it's so interesting that I hope that's the word that came to your mind, and that's so much of what you drew on, because we obviously started our careers at virtually the same time. And for me, I started sort of 6 months before COVID, right? So like, you know, my first ever industry job, 6 months, you don't know what you're doing anyway. Then all of a sudden COVID happens and you know what you're doing the least you ever have. And you're also, I was working on site by myself, you know, on shifts and stuff. It was just crazy. And then everything comes back, and I just think this particular, that the last few years of, you know, the world of the industry and everything has just been so unique. And I do wonder what it's like for other people in the industry who are older and have a lot more experience, and whether if somebody else would have said the word resilient. I don't know if that's just our experience because of everything crazy that's been going on, and it does feel like workloads have increased a lot over the last few years. But I think, to answer the question, you know, I think you've just got to enjoy it. And I think, you know, for me, it is kind of getting myself out there and coming to events like this. And, you know, I think there's a fine balance to be struck between completing your day job and finding the bits, you know, both in and outside of that really fuel you. And I just hone in on that when I can.
I think that touches on a lot of what Chris was saying earlier as well, which I thought was another great presentation, by the way. I'm going to turn to you, Sabina, in terms of, as an individual, not you necessarily, but as individuals, how do we kind of sustain this confidence in ourselves and the motivation when technology, the curve is just constant? You know, every day there's another acronym we have to learn, or, you know, how do we keep ourselves confident that we're up to scratch?
Great question. And I think it was one of the other presentations, they're talking about skills. The average shelf life of a skill is about 5 years. So whilst it's good to do the micro-learning and the training, it's also good to understand yourself. So when we first join the industry, what is our idea of success? And then when you're in mid-career, what is it then? And when you know yourself and what you're interested in, and what you're good at and what the company needs, that helps you make your decisions. And it's also talking about reflection. So when you take time to work out what you've been working on, you internalize the success, which helps combat imposter syndrome, and that helps with your confidence and your motivation. If you know where you're heading, they all tie into one another. But as Emily was saying, the workload is getting busier for everyone, so we need to ensure that we allow our teams to take time out to reflect on what they've done and their learnings, so they can move forward and have the resilience that everyone's mentioning.
Do you buy into this expert generalist phrase?
It's funny that you asked that. I would say it's more of a T-shaped. So we obviously went through patterns of generalists, everything's cyclical, so you're generalists and then specialists, but the way the world is moving, especially with AI and all the technology changing, engineers have to be IP savvy, understanding what's happening, where everything is going. So I think people are more T-shaped, so be generalised but have your interest, your specialism. Does that answer the question?
Yes. Thank you very much. Hope. New, as we just said, new tools, new platforms emerging, new acronyms every day. How do you decide whether something is worth investing your time in learning?
I'm fortunate enough to work at a company where they are very open about the changes that are happening, and that I think something that I've really picked up is to just try and focus on what's happening all the way up there and how it's filtering down to me, because that's ultimately what is going to be, in my view, that's what's going to change my day role. We might see it, we might think, okay, it's going to happen in 2 years' time, but 2 years will come round quick, and I don't want to be sat there thinking, oh, well, I wish I would have learned this new skill when they did tell us about it 2 years ago that they're going to start to develop and decommission this and do that. So I think really paying attention, if you have the option to industry news, industry changes, hearing about, what is going to happen. I think Carrie mentioned as well that, last year we didn't even really discuss AI. There were like whispers about it, and in the space of 12 months, the way it's just taken over, that, companies are encouraging their employees to learn AI for the benefit of their company without realising that eventually they will take our jobs. And I think we laugh about it, but it's a really crucial thing to know that, if you look back in if you look ahead, if we turn back to now and then think, well, we were warned and we were told that we are trying to automate things, but if we're sat here and we don't want to learn how to use AI, then how can we complain about it in the future if they come and say, okay, we don't need a team anymore because we've got one robot that will do it all, and we've got one person that knows how to fix the robot if it's broken, but we've all had 2 years to know about this change. So I think taking change seriously, taking comms seriously, and if they are written in a jargon that you don't understand, if you have the confidence, just ask, what does this mean? Because sometimes when things are explained to you, they're not as complex as they sound. I think just the jargon and the words that you mentioned can deter people quite often. Whereas me being the northern lass that I am, I just say, what does that mean? Like, I'll just be comfortable saying I don't get it. Can you explain it again? And that's what's helped me.
Great. Polly, what I think I know what you might answer to this, but the single change or innovation you think will most affect our work in the next 5 to 10 years?
AI.
I knew you were going to say that.
Did you want me to expand, or?
Just for Hope's benefit, explain what AI is.
Well, what I think is interesting is that we may not have spoke about it much here last year, but everything else was talking about AI. And it's funny how we almost default in every conversation to, oh, that's it, everything's over. Even whilst I was stood in the queue for the plane here, people were going, broadcast is dead. These were people that work in broadcast. Broadcast is dead. And I was like, well, what
Were
are you
they
doing
mid-career?
coming here then? They weren't actually. So I think it's exactly what you're saying. It's about adapting with the technology that's coming in, because AI will maybe take over our jobs at some point, but what does that look like and how do we evolve with it up to that point?
You want to come in?
Yeah, I was just going to add on to that really trying to see the positive in that, in terms of it opening up the talent market for creativity, the time, not to name drop products, but you know, at Viz we're putting more and more AI into our products. Look at sports, for example, and you know, that is automating, it's creating content faster, it's creating more engaging content, allowing the operators to not have to be so manual, not have to have that certain skill set, but to be more creative and create that content in that way. So it's an assistant, and maybe we shouldn't be so scared of it.
Okay, on that bombshell, our time is up. That flew by, my word. Thank you very much for listening, and please thank this magnificent panel.